3 minutes after 2 o'clock, you are tuned into Power FM. That's Power 987, and it's Power Zone between the hours of midnight till 3 a.m. We get to unpack conversations with you. We continue with our family meeting, unpacking with Utabile Mdluli. Just wrapped up a conversation with Litlogonolo, who also gave us insight in his own professional capacity. We're now joined by political scientist Utabile, who is going to further assist us with the conversation. A very good morning to you, Tabile, and welcome to Power Zone.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time this morning. You know, Tabile, we've just unpacked very briefly with Litlogonolo as well. And I think I'm quite curious to ask you, how do we then define in the political space, how do we then define what really right now is a temporary verdict when it comes to Senzo Mchunu that has been labeled as special leave? What is special leave? Because clearly the benefits still are associated with the special leave.
Of course. Firstly, good morning to the listeners at home. I was very underwhelmed by the president's address today. I really didn't expect anything differently. I would have been more shocked if the president had actually stated something that would have, appeased the nation following the claims of Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi that he made the previous week. And, the reason why I say that is I think our president really failed to read the room. We've had, time and time again, in terms of gender-based violence, the president even himself alluded to the heinous crimes and violent crimes that South Africans are facing on a daily basis, gender-based violence being one of the lead sort of in terms of violent crimes that women are and children are faced with in the country. And we've seen little to no sort of, response or action in terms of dealing with that. We've only had just mere conversations and just mere responses in terms of dealing with things like that. So really what the public wanted to or needed at this point in time was a more firm stance. We do understand when it comes to allegations, even those that were supported by some sort of evidence that were given by Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, an investigation does need to be launched. But, the president was very nonchalant, for a lack of a better word, and, saying the word special leave. You can even just hear by his tone, it's almost as if, he really doesn't want to deal with it, but for the sake of the noise that we're all making as a nation, he has to come and address this. So definitely I was disappointed by that. Special leave, that's exactly what it means. It just means that you're going to, be set aside. I think even set aside is even the wrong word, but you're just going to be staying at home while this matter is being investigated, while you're still receiving full benefits. And I think, South Africans were looking for something more deeper in terms of wanting the minister to atone for the allegations that were made, because I think that the part here that should really have stuck out for the president is that there's been this call to remove the minister even before an investigation is fully done, because of the fact that South Africans have lost hope in the judicial system or even in politics as a whole. So definitely, special leave, it just means you're staying at home while receiving full benefits. I'm extremely disappointed by the president at this point. Like I said, read the room,
Absolutely. One thing that stood out, like you speak about the noise in South Africa, was during an interview where a political analyst then described the situation as Mkhwanazi's allegations a political stunt. From your professional standpoint, do you agree with this firstly? And if so, what exactly would make it a political stunt?
I think that would actually be my question as well, is what would Mkhwanazi gain from this? Because I think we also need to look at the repercussions of making such bold and explosive claims as such as Mkhwanazi made. It doesn't just stop at he's made allegations. I think we've been reading reports of the fact that I think by the National Commissioner, who said that even the security of Mkhwanazi, and I believe that of his family as well, has been beefed up following the claims that he has made. So looking at the fact that he's put his life and that of his family at risk, then you have to think, does it really, does it really have the benefit? Does the risk actually outweigh the benefits? If we go back and actually look at, even the demeanor of Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi when he was making his address, optics in the political space, in the political arena, they play a lot in terms of conveying a message. So even going in and wearing the uniform of the special, of the task team, and having, the police force, the task force there with him, that really sent a message of, we're here for deal with something, we're here, we mean business. And it also, it sent the message of someone who's very tired with constantly, hitting a wall when it comes to dealing with matters like this. That's the sense that I got from Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, not someone who's necessarily, who's fighting a political battle. When you even look at, the claims that he made, they were all supported, and not once, he did make mention to the fact that, there was a certain individual who stated that there are plans to remove him. But if you dive deep to the message of Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, it was all about the defeating of the ends of justice. It was not personal in terms of why he was there, but for him, it was saying that, we have children, we have, a younger generation that are going to grow up and, that are now, part of, taking drugs because of these syndicates that, sort of like the ministers and the politicians, they're not dealing with it effectively because they themselves are implicated in such crimes. So you saw a father perhaps who is worried about, the state of the country moving forward, a person who, has children, has family, and who's generally just worried about the current status quo of the country.
Let's now talk about another comment that was made by MK Party as national spokesperson, Untlomulo Ndlela. They spoke about the replacement of after Senzo Mchunu has now been put on special leave, to say that an acting minister now has been put into place. And I believe that our president quoted section 91(3)(c), which then most people would argue, maybe the MK Party spokesperson argued, saying that an acting minister must come from a cabinet. And in this case, it's really not.
Yeah. I also had questions around that in terms of why bring someone from the outside. But that could also work in sort of two ways. The first one would be not bringing someone from cabinet, because it's who do you bring? Because if you look at now, you have the GNU, the Government of National Unity, and sort of then it's who do you bring that is not going to be contested by the other parties. And then secondly, bringing someone from the outside who is largely from academia, you might be thinking that, maybe someone who doesn't have as many skeletons in their closet as one would be a political appointee or someone from cabinet. So I think that's maybe that's the eye of where the president was going with this. But the dangers also of bringing someone from the outside in terms of adjustment to the role, in terms of their expertise in academia and the knowledge of the judicial system, the security cluster. The fine that is, that cannot be denied. But then it's about, there's a difference between academia and, sort of being a minister and taking on like a political role. That is very different. And then we need to think further in the sense that how effective then will this new acting minister be in relation or in relation to all the others that we've seen in terms of dealing with crime in the country, because it's also so important. This is such a significant position to put someone in. on on the basis of, one, you have these explosive claims that have been, lodged against, the security cluster and the judicial system, but also the day-to-day, like I mentioned earlier, the violent crimes that are taking place day in and day out, in terms of how effective will that minister then be in dealing with that, regardless of the fact that they might be an acting minister, but we still wanting to see results as the general public of South Africa.
I want to get into the NPA, but before I do that, because you have briefly touched on it, I want us to speak about the GNU. And here's where my point is at. We've often seen DA really always putting up a fight, but most importantly, always throwing a threat when it comes to GNU. With this whole situation and these allegations, maybe what do you foresee politically coming from the DA as a response after yesterday's meeting?
I think we've heard of quite a lot of political parties express their views. I haven't heard the DA yet in terms of how they feel about the president's address, but I'm most certain that we would hear something on the lines of, what I've expressed in terms of disappointment, and particularly in terms of, of this inquiry, or this judicial inquiry, because in previous years we haven't necessarily it hasn't yielded any results. One of the most famous inquiries being the Zondo Commission, that was meant to investigate state capture and come with some recommendations. Billions of rands was spent on that inquiry, yet it hasn't yielded any results. So I think we're about to see something like that in terms of the DA. I think also we must not forget that the DA is also fighting its own battles. Recently, we had a cabinet member or a parliamentarian of the DA recently, relieved of his position. The name of the DA member is sort of eluding me at this point, but the DA also is going to want to put more pressure as well on the president in dealing with Minister Senzo Mchunu, and it's going to express sort of its discontentment with what the president has said, on the basis of that, their own member who was found of wrongdoing was fired without the establishment of a commission of inquiry. So I think that's where we're really going to see, sort of the DA stance. I think, the DA has threatened, a lot of the times to leave the GNU, but actually has never, gone through with it. So I think sometimes, with the DA, it's all talk but no action when it comes to, in terms of actually leaving the GNU. So, but I think definitely in terms of what I've stated, that's what we are to expect come the DA address on the matter.
Let's speak about the NPA now, National Prosecuting Authority. We've seen Shamila Bato wanting to say a lot, especially refraining from name dropping, but also just indicating, yes, we do have a problem well within the NPA. And I think a lot of South Africans are losing hope and faith, especially because the NPA seems to be losing this fight against crime in our country. But with that being said, there's also an investigation that needs to go on. Are we allowing police officials to investigate themselves amongst themselves, or is there room to bring in an independent body to this investigation?
That's a difficult question, and the reason why I say that's a difficult question is because, again, stemming from the allegations made from Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi himself, to a very large extent, saying that the police is captured, the judicial system is captured, saying that even within the police, it's not men and women, it's not all of them that are dedicated to fighting crime. So even if there was an investigation, you would find that the ends of justice would be defeated because of the fact that they have coincided and colluded with syndicates and and the list goes on. And in terms of now allowing for the police themselves to sort of investigate themselves now, looking at from what the the union spokesperson said a few days ago. He was speaking on the matter of the political interference, or because stating from the fact that ministers are political appointees and they are not operational. And what he was saying was that they find a lot of interference from, the ministers, especially more specifically the Minister of Police, in terms of dealing with issues that deal with the police. So we do see an interference there, even claims of the fact that dockets are taken and they're not able to say anything about them because of the fact that it's coming from a higher body that is requesting of those dockets. So we do see that interference not only from the ministers or ministers in this case, but also from police themselves who have not honored their code of serving or their right to protect, but who have now coincided and colluded with these syndicates to defeat the ends of justice.
Tabile, another thing that raises a lot of eyebrows is the time frame that has been stipulated. Speaking about 3 months, another 3 months, making it 6 months, knowing very well that General Mkhwanazi's term is coming to an end. What do you see as foul play here, if any?
The president is definitely buying time. The president is definitely buying time in this matter because, first, before I even touch on General Mkhwanazi, in terms of his, time left to serve as the president commissioner, we also need to go back and think that he, the president himself, has once been, involved in a scandal, the Phala Phala, for example, that was very swiftly and very elegantly, swept under the carpet, and you hardly find anyone speaking about it. And again, that goes towards, it wasn't just, the president who did that, but it was members of parliament, inclusive of the Minister of Police. So it's buying time because he understands that he himself has scandals that were swept under. So it's then who is he then to sort of deal with the matters of corruption in a swift matter or in a way that would not only expose, but that would deal decisively with someone that has been, accused of corruption. So that's something that we haven't seen from the president, largely because of the fact that he himself has been implicated and saved by his own political party, for that matter. And then now going back to, Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi's term of office, that really, again, it's buying time. It's because if now Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi is no longer in the picture, you really are not going to see such a force or such an emphasis in dealing with these matters because we've only seen Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi really come forth. We haven't seen other members of the police or of the security cluster really come in terms of, they've mentioned or stated their support, but we haven't really seen them come through with claims of themselves or in sort of supporting evidence to what Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi has said as well. Even the police union, even those saying that they are in support of Mkhwanazi, but they cannot even make reference or to the comments or the allegations that he made during his address. So that's what we're seeing here. It's definitely just we're buying time tactic here on the side of the president.
Maybe just from your own opinion and gathering some of the questions and answers that we've just went back and forth with, do you foresee Mkhwanazi sticking around for another term? Do you foresee any contracts maybe coming to an end? What's your take on this?
There's a lot of pressure definitely on the side of the public to keep Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi. I think also one of the things that we need to highlight here is the fact that in terms of our general citizenry, in terms of understanding and active participation in terms of how our systems work, there tends to be a lack of understanding of how everything works and how everything fits in together. I'm making reference to the fact that some of the citizens might not even understand or know that Mkhwanazi is on a term contract that is meant to expire at a certain point. So I think his contract ending might speak to or might say to the citizenry who are not well informed, it might say that, okay, so because of the fact that he's fighting corruption or has made these bold allegations, they've decided to remove him. So it would be very, in however way that this takes out, because I'm not too sure if his contract will be renewed. He himself said that, it's not only he won't only be fighting this while in this position, he will fight in other ways, in other avenues, even when his tenure comes to an end. And that's the case. But I think in terms of how the president or the national commissioner, because the president doesn't deal with in terms of the commissioners themselves, I think the commissioner would have to be very strategic in what they do or what he does in terms of the contract of Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, because already claims, as we've mentioned before, there have been claims of citizens saying, if he's removed or suspended, we are going to take to the streets. So I just wanted to highlight in terms of information and how informed our citizenry is in terms of, the processes that take place in South Africa. There is a bit of an information deficit there, and it might be interpreted that he was removed for the fact that he has made these allegations. So in however way this plans out, they're going to have to keep that in mind, because as we've seen in terms of the 2021 unrest, we did see quite a lot of that that misinformation come into play in terms of how the citizenry then dealt with the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma.
I think just lastly, I'll pose the same question that I posed to Legodi. We were expecting for various names to come up and obviously face the music as well. But at this point, we kind of feel like Senzo Mchunu has been singled out, and not a lot of other people that have been accused of these allegations have been brought to book as well.
Mm-hmm. The question is why we only seeing a singling
Correct.
out of Senzo Mchunu. I think the reason why we are seeing that. Let's first look at the fact that I think Mkhwanazi, from his address, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think he made. Of course, he made reference to the entire security cluster, but I think the people that he really did mention by name was three. It was, Brown Mkhwanazi, it was Katlego, and then it was Minister Senzo Mchunu. And I think the reason why Senzo Mchunu is more bearing the heat from this is because, the other two are, not necessarily part of the government, so they are not civil servants. I think Katlego is already prosecuted at this point in time. That's how, some of this evidence has actually been able to be brought to light from his cell phone. And then Brown Mkhwanazi, of course, is an associate of Senzo Mchunu. So we're seeing more of a Senzo Mchunu more in the light of this because of the fact that he is a civil servant. Furthermore, not just any civil servant within cabinet, but specifically he is the Minister of Police, or was the Minister of Police. I'm not too sure where to put him at this point in time, from the unvague address by the president in terms of his special leave. But I think definitely he is bearing more of it because of the fact that he is a person as the Minister of Police. the one that is supposed to be upholding and defending South Africans. That's why we are seeing him. I don't think it's necessarily a personal attack on Senzo Mchunu for any matter. I think it's because of the position that he holds in government that is so significant, and I think it is the one more and above that is supposed to be truly protecting South Africans. That's why we're seeing as if he's the one that is in the limelight.
Do we have a lot of faith as South Africans with the acting minister currently, who has been put in by President Cyril Ramaphosa?
I mean, if you look at the ministers and in terms of the work that they've done, we really haven't seen much. More than anything, the status quo in the country has deteriorated, since last year. If you compare 2023 and 2024, the status quo in the country has quite deteriorated. So I think I can confidently say that we have not seen a change, and we haven't really seen ministers be at work. We haven't really seen the results that was meant to come, one, with the presidency of Cyril Ramaphosa, who took over from former President Jacob Zuma, who was supposed to be sort of the messiah of South Africans. We haven't really seen him and his cabinet, even before the GNU, really do much work. What we are seeing is 10 political parties in this GNU trying to work with each other in this marriage of convenience, pulling each other sort of like in a tug-of-war situation. We really haven't seen any results yielded by the ministers when it comes to improving the current status quo in the country. So I think in that I can then simply say I myself am really not seeing or I'm not I'm not feeling very positive about this, but let's not call it before anything happens. If we could be pleasantly surprised, and I would be very surprised if anything good happens from this.
Yeah, Tabile, I appreciate hopeful people like you. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's what a time to be alive in South Africa at this point in time. What a time! And I think I'm really hoping for the sake of South Africans, because I think one of the things that we need to that I would like to highlight is that in this point in time, we're seeing this explosive reaction from the citizenry, because they are the ones that have to deal with the repercussions of the security cluster not doing its work. Even what we're seeing in terms of immigration and Operation Tidula, it's not because it's xenophobic, but it's the failure of the system to act and to protect its citizens and to provide utmost services, basic services to its citizens. So I think, and hence I'm saying that for the benefit of the citizens, I'm truly hoping that this judicial inquiry works, because citizens, I think they are at their wit's end at this point in time. And as we've seen already, people are saying, lace up your groups and take to the streets, because of the fact that they are really fed up with what is happening. Hence, I started off my statement today with saying, the president has really failed to read the room. So for the sake of the citizenry, I really hope that this judicial inquiry really does its work.
Tabile, thank you very much for your time. It has been insightful.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's Tabile Mdluli, who is a political scientist, also giving us her views and her thoughts when it comes to the family meeting. I think some of the questions go unanswered because, honestly, truly speaking, as much as there can be answers that we need, not everything boils down to what we would like it to be. It's now 2:32 on your digital clock. It is Power Zone. We'll wrap it up at 3. We're going to be getting into your Monday devotion, because after all, we need all the strength and motivation and prayers that we could possibly ever get, given the state of our country, given everything that is happening, but also the week ahead of us.